full of joy and happiness. Whether the people, some of the people don't like the president, many do. No matter what your feeling was about him, everyone had a job, everybody was making money, everyone was getting a mortgage that wanted a mortgage, or being able to do what they wanted to do, travel and everything. And all of a sudden, COVID comes along, it comes to a screeching halt, not only economically, but on the emotional side, where people, especially in the states that are very poorly run, like California, Illinois, New York, these states are still under pretty hard lockdowns. And so you had people that were literally locked down, not coming out of their house for 2 months, in a lot of times 2 or 3 months, and still under pretty hard restrictions in some of these lesser well-run states, these states that are not too well run. So as far as the economics go, and the attitude, people are they're pretty tired of it.
What do you think that it's a lesson behind all this? What did you learn?
Well, I think, the lesson here is, one, know what you're dealing with before you jump in all the way. I think you had a lot of government hacks, people that had been in the government for a long time, jump into this thing and start running their mouth off on the premise that this was going to be this really dangerous thing. As it turns out, it's no more dangerous than the actual flu, unless you've got a real, a really bad pre-existing condition. So I think the thing is, one, learn about who you believe when you're reading and this stuff, when you're reading and watching the news on this kind of stuff. And two, I think going forward, I think the government will probably, at least the newer, fresher faces in government, will take the position of, use your best judgment. And if you feel like you're at risk, you stay at home. And if you feel like you're not at risk, go about your business like normal. So I'm guessing that will be the fallout. But you've also got a very contentious election going on right now. You've got a old line government hack, Joe Biden, who's been in the government for 47 years, versus a Trump who is a non-government kind of guy. So the big government people tend to like restrictions on people. They want people locked down. They want that control. Where you got a Trump that's like, hey, let's get the economy rolling, get everybody prosperous, everybody happy, everybody moving along. So, I think once the election is over and settled, I think you'll see a whole different America post-COVID, provided the
What do you
election
think?
goes the right way.
What would be the lesson that we have to learn? Because I think that in South America here, there are many people who lost their jobs, many debts. So if you have to advise to this new vision, what would the new vision be for entrepreneurship, for everybody? Schools are closed.
Well, I think this is one of those things that, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, nobody could have ever seen anyone coming. No one could have ever seen this thing coming. In other words, I don't know of any entrepreneurial book, including the one that I've got coming out next month. I don't know of any entrepreneurial book that saw a scenario like this, where you would have one or two people in the government really make a big stink out of, overblow something that would shut the entire economy down. I mean, you don't even see that in banking handbooks. I mean, you don't see that anywhere. So I think one of the big lessons is prepare for damn near anything nowadays, especially depending on who's in charge. Um, so make sure you got the rainy day fund, and also make sure that you're really well equipped to be doing business online, and assume that some of your customer base, or a good portion of your customer base, is not going to be able to come out of their house for a while. Again, I don't know that this will ever happen again like this. I don't think that the general population are stupid enough to fall for it. But I mean, when you take a look at how this thing really shook out, they talk about all of these COVID deaths. Well, as
Right.
it turns out, most of these people were dying anyway, and they happened to have COVID, so they put it down as a COVID death. There have been
Yeah.
multiple cases where people have come in dead on arrival from an auto accident. They swabbed them, they had COVID, and the cause of death was COVID. Well,
Right.
they had a car wreck, or they had a heart attack, or they were on their last leg of cancer. And that number, I was having dinner with a good friend of mine, a former governor here of one of the states, and he's a doctor, and it looks like about 96% of those cases were people who died with COVID, not of COVID. So when you take a look at the real numbers, it actually comes down to about the flu or a little less than the flu.
Wow. But
Yeah.
it's all the news and all. And how do you deal with fear? Because I guess that that's the main cause of deaths, right? People are so afraid.
Well, fear, is one of the factors of control. In other words, a government wants to control, and I don't mean to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist here, but when you put the fear into people, then people tend to submit, or people tend to it's like a kidnapper almost. And so your question was, how do you deal with the fear, or how do
Yeah,
you?
how you especially because I know that you have so many businesses. You were having a lifestyle which was interrupted, right?
Right,
And there are
very much so.
many people that are dealing with that, and they go into depression, and they have so much debt and stuff. How do you do it?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is to become active in how your countries are governed. I know you guys have a very different governing system than we do here. Um, here, I mean, the government shut everything down. They're now looking back, going, "Yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that." And I think it's probably the obligation of the government to pick up the tab for what people have lost and that kind of thing, and they can figure out print the money, and it's going to be a lot easier for them to print the money and make everyone whole than it is for people to suffer, go out of business, go bankrupt, and all the repercussions that go through the financial system. As far as like dealing with the actual fear, or dealing with the sudden change in lifestyle, here, especially in Hollywood, where you've got, it's a very ego-driven town.
Right.
You've got these people that run agencies, like the big agents or big managers or producers or directors, and you've got, they've been trapped literally at home. A lot of these people have not been in their office since March 15, and deals stopped because nobody really knew when they were going to be able to go back into studios and start producing. And some, they're just now finally starting to do that with some, not many. The studios were already running at about 30% capacity back before the COVID. Now they're running at, I don't know, it's like 8% capacity or 6% capacity or something, like some crazy low number. So it's caused a lot of these people to go back on alcohol, go back on drugs in an environment where all that stuff is pretty prevalent to start with. Then they're stuck at home, where they're not used to being, 24/7, and it's been wild.
Wow. And
Yeah.
one thing, I don't know how you deal with that, but about health, there are many people who are just taking, I don't know if you heard about this MMS, that is like something that helps you not to get COVID. And people are starting to wonder if they have to eat better or do exercise. What do you think is the message for the body? What do we have to do different?
I think triple your alcohol intake and just forget about the whole thing. Not really.
Okay.
Not really. If you're listening to this, don't actually do that. I'm just kidding. Uh, the ones that seems to me like they've come through it okay is the ones that have stayed active. Like, what? There was a lockdown, but I'm like, what? If somebody wants to stop me from coming in the office, come stop me. But I was here I came in every day. I stayed active. The minute airplane started running again, I was back on an airplane, doing what I needed to do. And you exercise, you read, you do. This is a great time to, if you have any creative passions, it's a great time to get those out of your system. So if you're going to be writing a book, or you've thought about uh, starting a YouTube channel, whatever it may be, this is one of those great times to do that. Keeps your mind occupied, plus it keeps kind of keeps your juices flowing, keeps you stimulated.
And how do you find new purpose? What's the purpose for this new? Because as you said, you don't know what's going to be next. Depends on who's the president, on what the economy is going to look like. How do you rebuild yourself to a new life?
Well, I mean, I think, if Trump gets reelected and he's able to hold on to the Senate here, that's going to be a real plus for the economy, because, he's a, kind of a no BS. He's a business guy. And everything, when there's plenty of money flowing, everything thrives, whether it be from the top to the bottom. Everyone has more than they had before. So you take a look at the economy, which was unbelievably stagnant. During the Obama years, it was pretty stagnant under the Bush years too, but under the Obama years in particular, I think the average GDP was growth was 1%. Under Trump, we were 4% or something like it's like 3.5, 4%. Some insane growth, which means you know people on the lower end were getting jobs and getting more pay than they've ever had, and the entrepreneurs that were able to raise money like they'd never been able to raise before, and the shareholders were building a lot of value very quickly. Now, if the government goes to a more socialist, I mean, you're down in South America, you see socialism, it doesn't work too well. So if we wind up with a Joe Biden who's really just a placeholder for some very far left type folks, I mean, you could, as crazy as this sounds, you could literally see the United States turning into a larger form of Venezuela. I mean, you could actually see this happening. And you saw how easy it was to lock people down over this whole COVID hoax here in the States. And these are pretty smart people. You take that and you combine it with the really, really, really bad economy, and then people looking to the government for bailout all the time, or looking to the government to make a living or to eat. Pretty bad combination. So I think this could go either way.
And what can we do with parenting? Schools, the children, teenagers who are just having a different lifestyle now.
Well, I mean, the thing you're seeing with children is you're seeing unbelievably high rates of depression. You're seeing suicide attempts and attempts and actually committing suicide are, I think the attempts are like 6 times more than they were before, and actual suicides 3 or 4 times more. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's huge. It's significant. I'll tell you one thing that this has been a big win for is these pharmaceutical companies. And I find them to be the darkest people on the planet. They have a massive lobby. They spend tons of money with these corrupt politicians, and they can get their way with anything. And you think about it, this lockdown has caused it's record depression. So you've got antidepressants, you've got the opioid crisis has doubled or tripled, I guess, or opioid usage since this has gone on illegally. You've got this has just been a huge boom for the people who are the biggest lobbyists that are pouring money into these politicians' pockets. This has been a big boom time, but it's been a real bust time for the small business guys. So small business guys and gals, it's been a really difficult time for them.
And what's the advice you would give? What do we do after this if we don't know what's going to happen? And kids are scared. There's like a lot of lock time at home and video games and a lot of, I don't know if it's like connecting, because I guess that also divorce was a problem, right? Relationships.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting let's go back to the kids for a second. Mm-hmm. When you take a look at this, you can pretty much assume that an entire year of education is out the window. So you literally have got an entire year of this generation of students have missed a year. Not only that, the parents that were dumb enough to keep their kids locked up in the house, those kids, their immune system is going to suffer because they haven't been out, picking up what they need to pick up. Number two, socially, I mean, it's stunted all these kids socially and emotionally without the camaraderie and the friendship and the adventure and the things you do, the discovery you do with other kids, groups of kids. Think about what that does to kids. I mean, so I think it's and by the way, look at the numbers again. If you're under 18 years old, if you get, your chances of having any real effect are little or nothing. There's nothing. And so, I think obviously if this type of thing rolls around again, the same thing I did with my dog. We traveled. We traveled. We had kids out to the ranch. We had fun. We had a normal spring and a normal summer. And I look at the kids that have not had that their parents are just now letting them out of the house. Man, they're night and day. They're different kids than they were going into this thing.
And what about relationships? Do you see problems with couples?
Liz, I'm losing you there. I'm losing the audio a little bit.
Uh, can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm losing you too. Can you hear me?
Huh. Barely. Yeah, I got you back a little better right now.
Okay, let me see.